The forest fell silent the moment a desperate lynx cub's cry pierced the air. And then a massive bear came charging through the trees. Deep in the wilderness, where nature's laws are absolute and merciless, a chance encounter between predator and prey was about to challenge everything we thought we knew about survival. What happened next wasn't just unexpected, it was impossible. Or at least, it should have been. In the ancient wilderness, where towering pines whisper secrets to one another, and moss-covered stones hold memories of millennia, the forest operates by unwritten rules as old as time itself. Predator and prey, strength and weakness, life and death. The natural order dictates who survives and who perishes without mercy or exception. Every creature knows its place in this intricate web of existence, a dance choreographed by evolution and necessity. For centuries, this delicate balance remained undisturbed, a perfect ecosystem where even the harshest realities served a purpose. The strong survived, the weak perished, and the forest thrived in its brutal harmony. Until now. Winter had lingered far too long this year, its icy grip refusing to loosen even as spring struggled to emerge from beneath the frozen soil. What should have been a time of renewal became instead a season of unprecedented hardship. Food became scarce as vegetation failed to bloom. Streams remained frozen, their life-giving waters locked away beneath impenetrable ice. The usual abundance that sustained life had withered away, leaving only desperation in its wake and testing even the most resilient creatures. The forest's inhabitants began to change, their behaviors twisting under the pressure of survival. Herbivores stripped bark from trees they would normally ignore. Carnivores ventured closer to human settlements than ever before. Animals that normally avoided each other now competed fiercely for the same meager resources, their encounters increasingly hostile and unpredictable. Territorial lines that had been respected for generations suddenly blurred. The forest's hierarchy, once so rigid and reliable, began to crumble beneath the weight of collective hunger. Even the most experienced creatures, those who had weathered many winters, sensed something different in the air, something wrong. The usual patterns of life had been disrupted, and in their place grew a tension that seemed to permeate every inch of the wilderness. The very atmosphere felt charged with potential energy, like the moment before lightning strikes. Then came the day when everything changed. The birds stopped singing mid-chorus, their melodies cutting off as if sliced by a knife. The deer froze mid-step, ears twitching nervously toward an unseen threat. Rabbits darted into burrows. Foxes slunk low to the ground. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. A silence so profound and unnatural descended upon the wilderness that it felt like the forest itself was bracing for something momentous, something that would shake the foundations of its ancient order. But the silence that day wasn't from fear of predators or the approach of humans with their thundersticks. No. It was because nature itself was holding its breath for what would happen next. The female lynx moved like a ghost through the underbrush, her spotted coat blending perfectly with the dappled shadows of the forest floor. Each paw placement was deliberate and silent, a testament to years of hunting experience in these woods. Once sleek and powerful, her frame now showed the harsh angles of prolonged hunger. Each rib visible beneath her dulled fur told a story of increasing desperation. A mother pushed to the very limits of survival. She paused, lifting her tufted ears to catch the faintest sounds, while her golden eyes scanned the terrain ahead. The forest had changed. Familiar paths now felt foreign, prey scents were scarce, and the usual rhythms of life had been disrupted by the lingering winter. Even the air tasted different. Sharper, colder, with none of the sweet undertones of sprouting vegetation that should have perfumed the forest by now. Hidden in a hollow beneath an ancient cedar's massive, gnarled roots, 3 tiny kittens waited for her return. Born just as winter should have released its grip on the land, they entered a world far crueler than it should have been for spring arrivals. Their mother had chosen the birthing den carefully after weeks of searching. Sheltered from wind and rain, protected from larger predators, close to a hunting ground that should have been teeming with prey by the time they were old enough to begin eating solid food. But that was before the endless winter changed everything, before the game trails emptied and smaller animals began to disappear. The kittens were nearly identical at first glance, all spotted fur and oversized paws they would eventually grow into. But the mother could distinguish each by scent and behavior. The female was bold, always first to pounce on her mother's tail or challenge her brother. The larger male was methodical, watching and learning before acting. And then there was the smallest kitten, a male with unusually dark markings circling his eyes like a bandit's mask, who worried her most. While his siblings wrestled and played, conserving just enough energy to grow stronger each day, the runt seemed to fade a little more with each passing hour. His mewling had grown weaker, his once bright eyes increasingly dull, his small body noticeably lighter each time she groomed him. Today, the mother lynx had made a difficult decision, born of necessity. The nearby hunting grounds had yielded nothing for 3 days straight, not even a mouse or vole. The streams where she sometimes caught fish remained frozen or ran too swift with icy meltwater. She would have to venture beyond her familiar territory, crossing boundaries she normally respected, leaving her kittens alone longer than ever before. Was a calculated risk. Abandonment versus starvation, with no good options. Before departing, she had thoroughly groomed each kitten, both to clean them and to reinforce her scent. This ritual served multiple purposes. It strengthened their bond, stimulated their circulation, and marked them as hers. A warning to any predator that might discover the den in her absence. More importantly, it masked their scent from potential threats that might be drawn to the smell of vulnerable young. Stay. She seemed to communicate with a gentle nuzzle to each kitten's head, a firm but gentle press of her muzzle that conveyed volumes in the silent language of Lynx. The larger 2 curled together in the warmest corner of the den, understanding the command through instinct honed by evolution. But the smallest one tried to follow, stumbling on uncertain legs before she gently pushed him back with her nose. His eyes, still blue where his siblings had already begun changing to amber, looked up at her with a confusion that tore at her heart. She lingered a moment longer, ensuring he settled beside his siblings before backing out of the den. The journey took her farther than she had ever gone while nursing kittens. Past the ridge where wolves sometimes denned, their scent markers clear warnings that she chose to ignore out of necessity. Through the marshy lowlands where humans occasionally ventured with their strange scents and unpredictable behaviors, into territories belonging to other predators, other lynx, foxes, even the occasional mountain lion, who would not welcome her presence or her hunting. Hours passed as she stalked, searched, and came up empty. The forest seemed emptier than she had ever known it, as if life itself was retreating from the world. When she finally managed to catch a scrawny hare, its own ribs showing through patchy fur, it was barely enough to keep her milk flowing for another day. Not enough to restore her strength or properly feed 3 growing kittens, but enough to buy time. Clutching her precious cargo in her jaws, she turned toward home, only to find the sky had darkened ominously during her hunt. The storm came suddenly and violently, as spring storms often do in these mountains. Sheets of cold rain mixed with the last bitter snowflakes of the season lashed at her face and soaked through her fur within minutes. Lightning split the sky in jagged white lines, illuminating the forest in brief, ghostly flashes that disoriented even her keen senses. Thunder shook the ground with such force that even the experienced hunter flinched, nearly dropping her hard-won prey. The mother lynx pushed forward against the deluge, her pace quickening as instinct warned her of danger beyond the obvious storm. Something felt wrong, a primal sense of urgency that drove her muscles beyond exhaustion. The forest floor, already saturated from melting snow, quickly became a network of rushing rivulets and expanding puddles. What had been dry creek beds that morning now roared with muddy torrents. Back at the den, the kittens huddled together as water began to seep through their shelter. The cedar's roots, normally a perfect canopy of protection, now channeled rainwater directly into their home. The two larger ones instinctively moved to higher ground within the hollow, climbing onto a natural shelf formed by the tree's inner roots. But the smallest one, disoriented and weakened by hunger, became confused as water rose around him. His siblings mewled urgently, trying to guide him to safety in their own way. But his movements were uncoordinated, his responses delayed. A sudden surge of water pushed through the den entrance, a flash flood from the hillside above, and the tiny kitten was swept out into the storm before he could make a sound. The current carried him tumbling through undergrowth, over exposed roots, and down a gentle slope away from everything familiar. Too weak to fight the flow, he could only ride it until a fallen log finally broke his journey, catching his sodden form in a tangle of branches. By the time his mother returned, racing through the downpour with her meager prize, the damage was done. The den held only 2 kittens now, their frightened cries leading her to the higher shelf where they had taken refuge. The smallest was gone. No scent, no sound, nothing but the rushing water to tell the story of his disappearance. She searched frantically, abandoning the hare to pace the den's perimeter, calling with soft vocalizations meant only for her young. The storm continued through the night as the mother lynx faced an impossible choice: abandon the search for one to feed and protect the 2 she still had, or risk all 3 by continuing to look for the lost kitten. Nature's mathematics are cruel but necessary. 1 life sacrificed for 2 to survive. With the heaviest of hearts, she returned to the den, bringing the now soaked hare to the remaining kittens. As the tiny lynx kitten trembled alone in unfamiliar territory, soaked to his skin and mewling pitifully for a mother who couldn't hear him over the storm's fury, he had no idea that fate had carried him miles from home. Nor did he realize he was wandering straight into the domain of the forest's most feared predator, a territory marked by claw-scarred trees and the lingering scent of countless kills. The old wolf moved through his territory with deliberate slowness, conserving what little energy remained in his battle-scarred body. Each step was measured, purposeful, the gait of a predator who had learned that patience often yielded better results than speed. Once the undisputed alpha of the most feared pack in the mountains, he now traveled alone. A king without subjects, a commander without an army, a legend reduced to a solitary hunter in the twilight of his existence. The scars that crisscrossed his muscular frame told stories of countless battles. Challenges for dominance, territorial disputes, desperate fights with prey, larger than himself. A jagged line across his muzzle came from the antlers of a bull elk 7 winters ago. The notch in his left ear was the work of a rival alpha during his youth. The barely visible line across his throat was from his most harrowing encounter, a battle with a mountain lion that nearly ended his reign before it truly began. Each mark was a testament to survival, to the indomitable will that had defined his long life in these unforgiving mountains. The pack that had once numbered 15 strong wolves, A dynasty he had built through strategic alliances and calculated aggression had dwindled over the brutal winter that refused to release its grip on the land. First, the youngest pups succumbed to hunger when the nursing mothers could no longer produce milk. Then, disease swept through their weakened ranks, a wasting sickness that left even the strongest hunters struggling to maintain their footing during pursuits. The final blow came when three rival packs, equally desperate but greater in number, formed an unprecedented alliance to claim his hunting grounds. The battle had been swift and merciless, unfolding across a blood-stained meadow during the darkest night of midwinter. Those of his pack who weren't killed outright had scattered to the winds, accepting subordinate positions in other groups rather than starve alongside their former leader. He had watched them go, one by one, their heads lowered in submission not to him, but to the harsh reality of survival. His mate had been the last to leave, lingering at the edge of the clearing where they had made their final stand together. Her eyes, once filled with the same fierce pride that still burned in his own, now held only resignation and the primal instinct to live another day. No judgment passed between them, only understanding. When she finally turned away, melting into the forest without looking back, something within the old wolf had hardened into resolute solitude. Only the alpha had refused to yield, to bow his head to former subordinates or rivals who had once slunk away from his mere growl. Even now, with his right hind leg dragging slightly from an injury that never properly healed, a deep muscle tear from that final battle. His massive head held the regal bearing of a creature born to rule. His coat, once lustrous black with silver markings that earned him the name Shadow among human trackers who occasionally ventured into these remote mountains, had dulled with age and hardship. Gray now dominated his muzzle and spread across his chest like frost claiming a landscape. Yet his eyes remained unnervingly intelligent, gleaming with a cold calculation that had kept him alive long past when most wolves succumbed to the harsh realities of their existence. Tonight, he patrolled the boundaries of what territory he could still reasonably defend, a shadow of his former domain, but still prime hunting ground centered around a series of connected meadows where prey animals gathered to graze on the first tender shoots of spring. He maintained his claim through sheer force of will, marking boundaries with urine and scat, occasionally letting his deep howl roll across the valleys, a sound that still caused other predators to hesitate before crossing into his realm. The howl was a bluff, a poker player's final bet with an empty hand. But it was all he had left. His senses, still sharp despite his years, catalogued every detail of his surroundings with practiced efficiency. The storm had altered the landscape, washing away familiar scent markers and creating new channels through the underbrush. Trees that had stood for generations now lay uprooted, creating fresh clearings where sunlight would soon reach the forest floor. The constant background music of the mountains, the bubbling of streams, the whisper of wind through pine needles, the distant calls of birds, had changed its melody, requiring him to relearn the symphony that had guided his hunts for years. The old wolf paused at the crest of a small ridge, his nostrils flaring as he caught an unfamiliar scent carried on the damp breeze. Not prey. There was none of the herbivore musk that triggered his hunting instincts. Not predator. No competing carnivores' warning signals that would raise his hackles. Something different. Foreign, yet somehow familiar. Like a forgotten dream, suddenly half-remembered. His ears pivoted forward with surgical precision as a faint sound reached him. A pitiful mewling unlike anything typically heard in his territory. The sound was so faint that even his exceptional hearing barely detected it beneath the constant dripping of rainwater from saturated foliage. Curiosity overrode caution, a rare occurrence for a predator who had survived by calculating risks with cold precision. Following the strange scent, he moved through the dripping vegetation with renewed purpose, his injured leg momentarily forgotten as instinct took over. The trail led him down the ridge, across a newly formed stream where yesterday there had been only dry earth, and into a small clearing dominated by a massive fallen pine. The ancient tree, its roots finally surrendering their hold during the storm's fury, had created a natural dam, behind which rainwater had pooled into a sizable pond. There, tangled in branches and barely visible in the growing darkness, was a tiny, bedraggled creature no larger than the wolf's paw. The scent was clear now. Lynx. A kit, barely old enough to have opened its eyes, somehow separated from its mother and siblings. The wolf had encountered Lynx before, of course. His pack had occasionally driven the solitary cats from kills or chased them from prime hunting grounds. He had even killed a young male lynx years ago when it made the mistake of challenging him over a deer carcass. But never had he seen one so young, so utterly defenseless. The lynx kitten, exhausted from his ordeal, had ceased struggling against the branches that both trapped and saved him from drowning. His small body trembled uncontrollably, partly from cold and partly from fear as the massive predator's shadow fell over him. The kit's spotted fur was plastered against his tiny frame, emphasizing how thin he had already become. Too weak even to hiss in defense, the instinctive response his kind directed at threats. He could only stare up with cloudy blue eyes at what he instinctively knew should be his death. The wolf lowered his great head, jaws capable of crushing bone now just inches from the helpless kitten. One quick bite would end the creature's suffering and provide the wolf with a morsel of nourishment. Hardly a meal, but in these desperate times, no food could be ignored. The predator's practical nature calculated the calories, the brief satisfaction the tiny body would provide. Yet he hesitated, his jaws remaining slightly open but not closing on the kit's vulnerable neck. Something about the kitten's unwavering gaze stirred a memory long buried beneath years of survival and struggle. Long ago, when the wolf was in his prime and his pack was still growing, he had discovered an abandoned wolf pup from another pack, likely left behind when its family fled from human hunters who occasionally ventured into the mountains. The pup had been weak, malnourished, its chances of survival nearly non-existent. Against all instinct and the suspicious growls of his packmates, he had carried that pup back to his den. Under his protection, the foundling had survived, thrived, and grown to become his most loyal packmate, fighting beside him until the very end. One of the last to fall in that final, desperate battle before the wolf found himself alone. The old wolf knew, with the deep intuition of a creature in tune with nature's rhythms, that he was facing his final season. His strength waned with each passing day. Hunting alone, he could bring down only smaller prey, and even then, success came less frequently. Soon, younger, stronger predators would claim what remained of his territory, and his legacy would vanish from the forest as if he had never ruled these mountains at all. Perhaps this strange twist of fate, this helpless enemy delivered to his jaws, offered something more than a mere meal. Perhaps it offered purpose in his final days, a reason to continue the fight against inevitable darkness. Decision made, the wolf gently closed his jaws around the kitten's scruff, lifting the tiny creature as delicately as a mother would her newborn. His teeth, worn from years of crushing bones and tearing flesh, now calibrated their pressure with astonishing precision. Firm enough to secure the kit, but gentle enough to avoid puncturing the fragile skin. The kitten dangled limply, too weak to struggle against this unexpected turn of events, his tiny limbs hanging surrendered beneath him. The wolf stood motionless for a moment, the kitten suspended from his jaws, as if giving the universe one final chance to question this deviation from the natural order. When no divine intervention came, He turned and began the long journey back to the small cave he now called home, a poor substitute for the elaborate den system his pack had once inhabited, but shelter nonetheless. Together, predator and prey, ancient enemies by nature's design, disappeared into the shadows of the forest as the storm finally began to subside. The last raindrops fell from the canopy above, and the first tentative rays of moonlight pierced the clouds, casting dappled silver patterns across the wolf's dark coat as he carried his improbable burden through the night. Behind them, the first tentative bird songs announced that the long silence of the forest was finally breaking. A robin trilled experimentally, then another joined in, then a thrush, a chorus growing in confidence as if nature itself was acknowledging that something fundamental had shifted in the ancient balance of the wilderness. In the distance, unheard by either wolf or kitten, a female lynx's plaintive call echoed through the valleys, searching for what both knew would never be found. The old wolf made his way through the dense underbrush, the weight of the tiny lynx kitten hanging from his jaws, a constant reminder of his uncharacteristic decision. Each step required more effort than the last. His legs trembled with fatigue, and the muscles in his back ached from the strain of carrying the small creature. Yet the wolf pressed on, driven by a strange sense of purpose that ignited a flicker of hope within him, illuminating the dark corners of his heart that had felt desolate for so long. As he reached the entrance of his cave, a modest shelter nestled beneath a rocky overhang, shielded from the elements, the wolf carefully placed the kitten on the ground, gently releasing the scruff of its neck. The little creature, still dazed and shivering from exposure, blinked up at him with wide, frightened blue eyes. The warmth of the cave contrasted sharply with the cold, damp air outside. But the kitten seemed too weak to appreciate the change, too exhausted to comprehend the safety offered by the wolf's choice. The wolf stepped back, maintaining a respectful distance. He had saved the kitten, but it was still a creature of prey. Instinct could dictate its next move. He watched as the kitten struggled to rise, its legs quivering beneath it like new blades of grass in a gentle breeze. The sight stirred memories within the wolf, reminiscent of his own early days. Those fragile moments of life where fear and uncertainty loomed larger than any predator. With a determined effort, the kitten finally managed to push itself upright, though its balance was shaky, like a young tree bending in the wind. It stumbled a few steps forward, its tiny heart racing, before collapsing back onto the ground, panting heavily. The wolf's heart ached at the sight. He had seen countless animals in distress, but there was something uniquely poignant about this tiny lynx, abandoned and alone, that tugged at the very essence of his being. Deciding to take action, the wolf moved deeper into the cave, where the remains of his last meal lay, scraps of a deer he had managed to catch days before. Though he had intended to save the fresh meat for himself, the needs of the kitten outweighed his own hunger. He returned with a piece of meat, dropping it quietly in front of the little lynx, who stared at the offering with wide, cautious eyes. The kitten eyed the meat with suspicion, its instincts telling it to be wary of the predator that had saved it. But hunger soon overcame fear, as instinct often does in the wild. It crawled forward, its tiny nose twitching as it sniffed the piece of meat. With a tentative bite, it began to eat, gnawing at the unfamiliar food. The wolf watched, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction as the kitten began to fill its belly, the soft sounds of its eating echoing gently in the cave. Days turned into a week, and the bond between the old wolf and the lynx kitten deepened in ways neither could have anticipated. Each morning, the wolf would venture out to hunt, returning with a fresh kill or scavenged remains to share with the growing kitten. Slowly, the kitten regained its strength. its coat becoming shinier, its movements more confident, although it still looked frail next to the powerful wolf. The wolf, too, found renewed vigor in the presence of the kitten. The companionship offered him a sense of purpose, a reason to keep moving forward despite the aches in his bones and the weariness that threatened his spirit. Together, they formed an unusual pair, the legendary solitary wolf and the tiny lynx, an alliance forged in the crucible of survival. It was a dynamic that defied nature's expectations, yet it thrived in the heart of the wilderness. As the days warmed, the landscape transformed, bursting into life with the sounds and scents of spring. The forest came alive with the melodies of returning birds, finches, sparrows, and thrushes, all filling the air with their joyous songs. Flowers bloomed in vibrant colors, painting the forest floor in hues of yellow, purple, and white, while the air filled with the sweet scent of new life. The old wolf felt invigorated by the change, and he led the kitten on short excursions outside their cave, teaching it the ways of the wild. He showed it how to stalk quietly through the underbrush, how to blend into the shadows, how to remain alert to every sound, lessons he once shared with his own pack, now passed on to an unlikely student. The kitten, with its natural agility and insatiable curiosity, flourished under the wolf's tutelage. It learned to leap from fallen logs and navigate rocky terrain with increasing confidence, its instincts sharpening with each passing day. Yet, while its body grew stronger, the old wolf remained acutely aware of the kitten's vulnerability. He kept a watchful eye for any danger, instinctively positioning himself between the kitten and any potential threat, a remnant of the protective instincts that had defined his reign as alpha. The old wolf's heart swelled with pride as he witnessed the kitten's growth, its playful nature often pulling them into spontaneous games of chase through the forest. They would dart between trees and leap over obstacles, the wolf allowing the kitten to think it was leading the way, though he always kept a watchful gaze on its movements. One afternoon, as they explored a sun-drenched glade, the wolf caught a movement in the corner of his eye. A rustle in the bushes drew his attention, and he quickly signaled for the kitten to stay back. They watched together as a young doe emerged, cautiously stepping into the clearing to graze. The wolf's instincts flared, his body tensed, ready to spring into action. But as he watched the doe, he felt a surge of something unexpected, a desire not to hunt, but to observe. The kitten, too, was mesmerized. Its eyes were wide with wonder as it watched the doe nibble on tender shoots. This was the first time it had seen a creature so large and graceful. The wolf remained still, allowing the kitten to experience this moment without interference. They stayed hidden, a silent duo in the sun-dappled shadows, embracing the connection to the wild that surrounded them. It was a moment of shared tranquility, a brief escape from the harsh realities of life in the wild. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the glade, the wolf felt a shift within himself. For so long, he had been defined by his role as a predator, a solitary figure driven by the instinct to hunt and survive. But now, with the lynx kitten at his side, he was beginning to understand a different kind of strength. The strength found in companionship, in nurturing, in forging bonds that transcended the primal nature of predator and prey. That evening, as they returned to their cave, the wolf settled down on his side, allowing the kitten to curl up against his warm fur. The kitten purred softly, a sound that resonated within the wolf's heart, filling the empty spaces left by the loss of his pack. He had not known that such a bond could exist between them, one that blurred the lines of instinct and instinctive roles. It was a connection that brought warmth to his soul, reminding him that even in the harshest of realities, beauty could be found in the most unexpected places. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the wolf closed his eyes, feeling the kitten's warmth beside him. For the first time in many moons, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. In this fragile new life, they had both found something precious, a connection that would guide them through the challenges that lay ahead, a reminder that the wild was full of surprises, and that sometimes the most unexpected alliances could lead to the greatest joys. The days rolled into weeks, and the bond between the wolf and the kitten flourished. They became a familiar sight in the forest, a striking duo of contrasting colors and sizes, moving as one through the underbrush. Other creatures took notice, some out of curiosity, others out of confusion. Birds chirped excitedly from the treetops, and even the timid deer seemed to pause and watch as the old wolf and the lynx ventured deeper into the heart of the forest. One day, as they explored a particularly dense thicket, the kitten darted ahead, chasing after a fluttering butterfly that danced tantalizingly close. The wolf watched, amused, as the little lynx leaped and bounded, its playful spirit radiating joy. The butterfly led the kitten into a clearing filled with patches of colorful flowers, where the soft breeze played with the petals, creating a mesmerizing display of motion and color. The wolf couldn't help but chuckle at the sheer exuberance of the moment. But as the kitten chased the butterfly, the wolf's instincts flared again, alerting him to a distant rustle in the bushes beyond the clearing. A sense of unease washed over him, and he instinctively moved to position himself between the source of the noise and the kitten. His instincts never wavered. Even in moments of joy, he remained vigilant. The forest was a beautiful place, but it was also a dangerous one, and he would not allow anything to threaten the life he had chosen to protect. In an instant, a fox emerged from the thicket, its bright orange coat a stark contrast against the vibrant greens of the meadow. The fox hesitated, its eyes darting between the wolf and the kitten, clearly uncertain about its next move. The wolf growled softly, a low rumble that echoed through the clearing, a warning to the intruder that this space was protected. The fox, sensing the danger, quickly turned and slipped back into the underbrush, disappearing as swiftly as it had arrived. The kitten, oblivious to the tension, continued its playful chase after the butterfly, eventually collapsing into the soft grass, panting with excitement. The wolf, reassured that the danger had passed, approached the kitten, nudging it gently with his nose. The kitten looked up, its bright blue eyes sparkling with joy, and the wolf couldn't help but feel a swell of affection for the little creature. In that moment, the wolf realized just how much the kitten had become a part of him, filling a void that had long felt insurmountable. He had not only rescued a life, but had unknowingly invited a spirit of resilience and hope back into his own. The bond they shared was not merely one of predator and prey, but of companionship, mutual respect, and an understanding that transcended their natural instincts. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and purple, the wolf and the kitten returned to their cave, side by side. They had navigated the challenges of the wild together, faced threats, and celebrated victories, each day reinforcing their bond. In the heart of the forest, amidst the whispers of the wind and the songs of the night, they had found something truly extraordinary. A family forged in the most unexpected of circumstances. With each passing day, the wolf felt more alive than he had in years. The kitten had become his purpose, his reason to rise with the sun and to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they were not just surviving, they were thriving, carving out a place in the world that was uniquely their own. And as the stars twinkled overhead, the wolf knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. An unbreakable bond that defied the odds, rooted in the heart of the wild. As the weeks continued to unfold, the changing seasons began to paint the landscape in different hues. The vibrant greens of spring faded into the rich golds and browns of summer, and the forest thrummed with life. The wolf and the kitten spent their days exploring every nook and cranny, from sun-drenched clearings filled with wildflowers to dense thickets where shadows danced, hiding secrets of their own. They would chase each other playfully, the wolf often feigning exhaustion, allowing the kitten to think it was the superior hunter. The kitten would pounce and leap, its small body agile and quick, while the wolf reveled in the joy of watching its young companion flourish. One day, as the sun climbed high in the sky, casting a warm glow over the forest, the wolf decided it was time for the kitten to learn the art of hunting. He led the little lynx to a small stream that wound its way through the woods, where the water sparkled like diamonds under the sunlight. The wolf crouched low, demonstrating the stealth and patience required to approach prey. He guided the kitten through the motions, coaxing it to mimic his movements as they stalked a group of unsuspecting rabbits that fed nearby. The old wolf moved with a grace that spoke of years of experience, while the kitten, full of youthful exuberance, tried to keep pace, but often stumbled over roots and rocks. The wolf couldn't suppress a soft chuckle at the sight, but he remained focused, knowing that teaching the kitten required both patience and encouragement. They approached the rabbit slowly, the wolf whispering words of guidance, reminding the kitten to watch the movement of the small creatures and anticipate their next move. As they drew closer, the wolf felt a surge of pride swell within him. Here was a new generation, a new spirit that embodied the wild's resilience, and he was imparting his knowledge to it. The kitten, eyes wide with concentration, crouched low, its body trembling with anticipation. The moment felt electric, filled with the promise of what could be. They were a team, a formidable duo, and the thrill of the hunt pulsed through the air. Suddenly, a rabbit lifted its head, sensing the presence of the predators. In a flash, it bolted, and the kitten instinctively pounced. But it miscalculated, landing short of its target. The rabbit darted away, disappearing into the underbrush. The wolf watched as the kitten scrambled to its feet, frustration evident in its small form. He stepped forward, nudging the kitten gently with his nose, offering reassurance. "Patience," he said, his voice low and soothing. "Hunting is an art, not a race. You must learn to observe and wait for the right moment." The kitten looked up, its blue eyes sparkling with determination. It nodded, taking a deep breath, and together they settled back into position, the wolf teaching the kitten to remain still, to blend into the environment. They resumed their watch, waiting for the next opportunity. The forest was alive with sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of birds, and the soft trickle of the stream. It was a symphony of life, and now they were part of it. After several more attempts, the kitten's persistence began to pay off. It learned to move with more stealth, to anticipate the rabbit's movements, and to time its pounces more effectively. On one particular afternoon, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, the kitten finally succeeded. With a sudden burst of speed, it leaped, its paws connecting with a rabbit and bringing it down with a triumphant yowl. The wolf watched, his heart swelling with pride as the little lynx reveled in its victory, dancing around the fallen prey, its spirit shining bright. "Very well done," the wolf praised, his voice filled with warmth. The kitten, exhilarated by its success, rolled around playfully with the rabbit, instinctively learning the importance of celebrating victories, no matter how small. It was a moment of pure joy, a rite of passage that would mark the beginning of its journey as a skilled hunter. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between the wolf and the kitten continued to strengthen. They had weathered the storms of uncertainty and fear, and now they faced the challenges of the wilderness together, side by side. The kitten grew into a young lynx, its body filling out, its coat thickening, and its instincts sharpening. The wolf took pride in its development, knowing that he had played a part in nurturing and guiding this young life. One evening, as they returned to their cave, after a long day of exploring, the wolf sensed a change in the atmosphere. The air felt charged, electric with the promise of something new. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the landscape, and the world was painted in shades of gold and crimson. As they reached the entrance of their cave, the wolf's instincts kicked in, alerting him to the presence of another creature nearby. He turned, scanning the surroundings, his senses heightened. The kitten, now more aware of its environment, stayed close to the wolf, watching intently as they both waited for whatever might emerge from the shadows. After a few moments, a figure stepped into view. A lean, elegant lynx with striking green eyes. The newcomer regarded them with a mix of curiosity and caution, clearly assessing the situation. The wolf positioned himself protectively in front of the kitten, a growl rumbling deep in his chest. He had no intention of allowing any harm to come to the young lynx he had come to love. But the newcomer raised its head, its expression shifting from wariness to recognition. "Easy, old friend," the lynx said, its voice smooth and melodic. "I mean no harm." The wolf relaxed slightly, still keeping his stance firm. "Who are you, and what brings you here?" he asked, his voice low and commanding. "I am Lyra," the lynx replied, her eyes flickering to the kitten before returning to the wolf. "I've been watching from a distance. I sensed the change in your heart, and I wanted to see for myself." The wolf's brow furrowed in confusion, but Lyra continued, her voice steady. "I know of your past, of the alpha you once were. But it seems you have found something new, something worth protecting. I came to offer my support, to help you both in this wilderness." The kitten, emboldened by the conversation, stepped forward, curiosity sparkling in its eyes. "You know my guardian?" it asked, its voice small but filled with eagerness. "He's been teaching me how to hunt. I can catch rabbits now." Lyra smiled, her demeanor softening as she regarded the young lynx. "I see the bond you share, and it is a beautiful thing. But the wild can be unforgiving, and you will need allies. There are dangers lurking beyond the horizons, and as you grow stronger, you must also grow wiser." The wolf, still cautious but intrigued, considered Lyra's words. He had always valued strength and loyalty, but he had also learned that community could be a source of protection and resilience. "What do you propose?" he asked, his tone more measured now. "I can help you both navigate these woods," Lyra offered. "There are secrets to be learned, places to explore, and allies to be found. Together, we can ensure that the bond you forged remains strong and unbreakable, even in the face of adversity." After a moment's hesitation, the wolf nodded. He felt the stirrings of hope again, a flicker of possibility igniting within him. "Very well, Lyra. We will accept your guidance, but know this. I will protect the kitten with my life." Lyra nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "And I will protect you both in return," she said, her green eyes shining with sincerity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. The wolf, the kitten, and the newcomer stood together, united by a shared purpose. The forest stretched out before them, vast and full. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, the wolf, the kitten, and the newcomer stood together, united by a shared purpose. The forest stretched out before them, vast and full of promise, but also fraught with uncertainty. The wolf felt a stirring within him, a sense of hope that had long been dormant, now awakening with the possibility of new alliances. Lyra, the lynx, moved gracefully around the clearing, her presence exuding confidence and assurance. "Let's start by exploring the boundaries of your territory," she suggested, her voice steady and inviting. "Understanding the land will be essential for both of you, especially as the seasons change and new challenges arise." The wolf nodded, grateful for Lyra's guidance. He had roamed these woods for years, but her fresh perspective promised to reveal hidden secrets he had overlooked. With Lyra leading the way, they set off deeper into the forest, the kitten bouncing excitedly behind them, its energy infectious. The kitten's little paws pattered against the soft ground, leaving faint impressions in the earth, while its bright blue eyes sparkled with anticipation. As they walked, Lyra shared her knowledge of the land, its hidden trails, the best places to find water, and where prey was most abundant. The kitten listened intently, eyes wide with curiosity, soaking in every word. The wolf felt a sense of pride as he observed the kitten's eagerness to learn, recognizing the importance of this new dynamic. Lyra's presence not only provided practical knowledge, but also offered companionship, filling the void left by his lost pack. They ventured to a nearby ridge, where the trees parted to reveal a breathtaking view of the valley below. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden rays that illuminated the treetops. It was a moment of beauty that took the wolf's breath away. "This is one of my favorite spots," Lyra said, her voice softening as she took in the scenery. "From here, you can see the movements of the herds grazing in the meadows below." The wolf watched as the kitten approached the edge of the ridge, its tiny frame silhouetted against the vibrant sky. With a mix of caution and curiosity, the kitten peered down into the valley, fascinated by the sight of deer grazing peacefully. It turned to the wolf, question evident in its gaze. "Can we catch them?" it asked, excitement bubbling in its voice. The wolf chuckled softly, leaning down to nudge the kitten. "Not yet, little one. We must first understand how to approach them without being detected. Hunting requires patience, strategy, and teamwork." Lyra interjected, "And I can help with that. With time, you'll learn to recognize the signs, the trails, the scents, and the behaviors that will guide you to success." The kitten nodded eagerly, determination shining in its eyes. After taking in the view, they continued their exploration, Lyra leading them through a network of trails known only to the creatures of the forest. They came across a hidden brook, its crystal-clear waters bubbling over smooth stones. The wolf and kitten stopped to drink, refreshing themselves from the cool water. The kitten splashed, playfully enjoying the sensation of the water against its fur, while the wolf watched with a fond smile, his heart swelling at the sight of the young lynx's joy. "Stay alert," the wolf warned, his instincts sharpening. "We must be cautious. Other predators may be nearby." He scanned the surroundings, ensuring they were safe, while Lyra watched the kitten with a knowing smile, appreciating the bond that was forming between them. Over the next few days, the trio explored every corner of their territory, growing closer as they encountered various challenges together. They faced the elements, traversing muddy paths after heavy rains, and learned to navigate the dense thickets that concealed hidden dangers. Lyra taught them how to recognize the signs of other animals, both prey and predator, sharpening their instincts and building their confidence. One afternoon, while resting in a sun-drenched clearing, Lyra shared stories of her own past. "I was once part of a small family group, much like yours," she began, her eyes distant as she recalled memories. "But as we grew, the competition became fierce, and many of us were driven apart. I learned to survive on my own, but I always longed for companionship. It's rare to find kindred spirits in the wild, yet here we are." The wolf nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He too had experienced the pain of losing his pack and the loneliness that followed. "We may have lost our families, but we can create a new one," he replied, glancing at the kitten, who was curled up beside him, eyes half closed as it listened intently. "Together, we are stronger." The kitten, sensing the gravity of their discussion, raised its head, eyes glowing with enthusiasm. "Can I be the best hunter in our new family?" it asked, determination radiating from its small frame. "Of course," Lyra replied, her voice warm with encouragement. "With practice, you will become a formidable hunter. But remember, hunting isn't just about strength. It's also about teamwork and trust." As the days passed, the bond between the wolf, the kitten, and Lyra deepened. They became a family forged through shared experiences, laughter, and lessons learned in the wild. The kitten thrived under their mentorship, its playful spirit blending seamlessly with the wolf's protective instincts and Lyra's wisdom. One evening, as the sun set and the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the trio gathered at the entrance of their cave. The wolf felt a sense of contentment wash over him as he watched the kitten dart back and forth, playfully challenging Lyra to a friendly game of chase. Their laughter echoed through the forest, a sound that felt like a celebration of life itself. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes caught the wolf's attention, and he instinctively moved closer to the entrance, his instincts alerting him to a potential threat. Lyra and the kitten paused, sensing the shift in the wolf's demeanor. The wolf's eyes narrowed as he focused on the movement, ready to defend his newfound family against any danger. Out of the shadows stepped a large male lynx, its eyes gleaming with curiosity and a hint of wariness. The newcomer regarded the trio with interest, assessing the situation. Lyra's expression shifted from surprise to recognition. "Kieran!" she exclaimed, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and relief. "I didn't expect to see you here." The wolf remained tense, unsure of the newcomer's intentions. Kieran approached cautiously, his eyes darting between Lyra and the wolf. "I sensed changes in the territory," he said, his voice low and rumbling. "I wanted to see for myself." "Who is this?" He gestured toward the wolf and the kitten. "This is my friend, the old wolf," Lyra explained, her tone filled with pride. "And this is his young companion, the future of our family." She stepped aside to reveal the kitten, who stood proudly, puffing out its chest. Kieran's expression softened as he regarded the kitten. "A brave little one," he said, nodding with approval. "It seems you found a way to survive against the odds." The wolf, sensing the tension easing slightly, finally spoke. "I've taken the kitten under my wing. We're forming a new family here, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect it." Kieran studied the wolf closely, his gaze piercing. "I can respect that. The wild is a hard place, and community is essential. But know this: every territory has its challenges, and there are those who would seek to disrupt your newfound peace." "What do you mean?" the wolf asked, his ears perked with concern. There are rival packs and predators that may threaten your safety. Kieran replied, his expression serious. I can help you navigate these dangers. I was part of a group that had successfully defended against such threats, and I've learned a thing or two about survival in this wild. The wolf considered Kieran's words, weighing the offer of support. Lyra had spoken highly of Kieran, and if he could provide valuable insights, it could strengthen their chances of thriving in their territory. Very well, he replied cautiously. We could use your knowledge. As the night deepened, the four of them gathered around the entrance of the cave, the stars shining brightly above them. They shared stories of their lives, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. Kieran spoke of his experiences, his voice steady as he recounted the challenges faced by his previous group and how they had learned to work as a cohesive unit. In turn, the wolf shared his own tale of loss and loneliness and how he had come to care for the young Lynx at his side. Lyra chimed in with her tales of survival, weaving a tapestry of resilience and determination that resonated with them all. The kitten listened intently, absorbing the stories like a sponge, filled with dreams of adventures yet to come. As the stars twinkled in the night sky, it became clear that they were not just sharing stories. They were forging bonds that would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. They were stronger together, united in purpose and spirit, ready to face the uncertainties of the wild with courage and determination. With the dawn of a new day, the wolf felt a renewed sense of hope. Together, they would navigate the trials of their territory, face whatever threats arose, and build a family that would thrive in the heart of the wild. The old wolf, once a solitary figure of the forest, now stood alongside his companions. An unexpected family, bound by loyalty and love, ready to embrace whatever the future held. As the weeks unfolded, the group began to establish routines. Each day held new lessons and discoveries. They would rise early, greeted by the soft light of dawn filtering through the trees, and venture into the woods as a united front. The wolf took on the role of protector, always vigilant, while Lyra shared her wisdom about the land and its inhabitants, teaching the kitten the subtle ways of nature. One bright morning, they decided to practice hunting together. The wolf led the group to a clearing where a herd of deer grazed peacefully. He explained the importance of stealth and strategy, emphasizing that hunting was not merely about speed or strength, but also about understanding the behavior of prey. Lyra nodded in agreement, adding her own insights about the deer's patterns and the best positions for ambushing. Remember, the wolf said, his voice firm yet encouraging, patience is key. We must work together and communicate without making noise. The kitten listened intently, heart racing with excitement and a hint of nervousness. They positioned themselves strategically, the wolf leading the way. He crouched low, demonstrating how to blend into the environment, while Lyra followed suit. The kitten mimicked their movements, its little body trembling with anticipation. As they began to close in on the deer, the wolf felt a surge of pride, watching the kitten focus intently, its instincts sharpening with every passing moment. Suddenly, the wind shifted, carrying their scent to the grazing deer. The animals lifted their heads, alert and wary. The wolf's heart raced, but he remained still, hushing the kitten with a gentle glance. They had to wait for the right moment. Finally, a fawn, oblivious to the danger, wandered too far from the herd. The wolf nodded to Lyra, and they prepared to move in unison. The kitten's eyes widened with excitement, and it could barely restrain itself. With a swift motion, the wolf and Lyra bounded forward, their movements fluid and practiced, and the kitten followed suit, leaping with all its might. The fawn, startled, bolted, but the trio was quick. The wolf led the chase, his powerful legs propelling him forward, while Lyra moved gracefully by his side. The kitten struggled to keep up, but determination fueled its every step. They zigzagged through the underbrush, weaving between trees, their hearts pounding in unison. Finally, the wolf and Lyra managed to corner the fawn against a thicket. The deer, realizing it had nowhere to run, froze in fear. The wolf turned to the kitten, who was panting and watching wide-eyed. "Now, remember what we learned," he said, nodding toward the fawn. With a newfound confidence, the kitten crept forward, mimicking the stealthy movements Lyra had taught it. It edged closer, heart racing, adrenaline coursing through its veins. Just as it reached the right distance, the kitten leapt, landing squarely on the fawn's back. The sudden weight startled the fawn, causing it to leap into the air. And with a swift motion, the wolf and Lyra sprang into action, helping to secure the fawn. The hunt was swift and efficient. The wolf and Lyra worked seamlessly, guiding the fawn until it was finally subdued. The kitten watched in awe, filled with a mix of excitement and pride. It had participated in its first hunt, and it felt a rush of exhilaration at being part of the process. As they gathered around their catch, the kitten could hardly contain its excitement. "I did it. I really did it," it exclaimed, bouncing around in a circle. The wolf chuckled, feeling a profound sense of joy at the kitten's enthusiasm. "You did well, little one," he praised, nuzzling the kitten affectionately. "You showed great courage and determination." Lyra smiled, her eyes twinkling with pride. "And you learned the importance of working as a team. Every hunt is a lesson, and today you've taken your first step into becoming a skilled hunter." With the fawn secured, they celebrated their success. They feasted together, sharing the meal as a family. The kitten savored the taste of its first successful hunt, feeling a sense of belonging and accomplishment that it had never experienced before. The wolf and Lyra exchanged knowing glances, both understanding that this was a moment that would strengthen their bond even further. As the days turned into weeks, the camaraderie among them grew stronger. They faced challenges and adventures together, learning and adapting to the rhythms of the wild. The forest became their playground, filled with mysteries waiting to be uncovered. They explored hidden caves, climbed steep hills, and discovered new streams and meadows bursting with life. However, as the seasons changed, the forest began to shift. The lush greens of summer gradually gave way to the vibrant hues of autumn, painting the landscape in warm tones of gold and crimson. The air grew crisp, and the days became shorter. The trio adjusted their routines, preparing for the colder months ahead. One chilly morning, while the frost still clung to the grass, the wolf and Lyra decided it was time to teach the kitten about foraging. They ventured into a part of the forest where berry bushes thrived. Their branches weighed down with ripe, plump fruit. The kitten, excited by the prospect of tasting something new, followed closely behind. Lyra demonstrated how to identify the safe berries while explaining which ones were best for their diet. "These are rich in nutrients and will help keep us strong through the winter," she said, picking a handful of berries and popping one into her mouth. The kitten watched in awe, eager to try them for itself. As they foraged, laughter and playful banter filled the air. The kitten's small frame darted from bush to bush, its enthusiasm infectious. The wolf felt a warmth in his heart as he observed the joy radiating from the kitten, a stark contrast to the loneliness he had felt for so long. Suddenly, the calm atmosphere shifted. A loud rustling in the nearby bushes drew their attention. The wolf's instincts kicked in, and he immediately positioned himself between the sound and the kitten. Lyra followed suit, her body tense as they prepared to confront whatever danger might emerge. From the dense underbrush, a large boar burst forth, snorting angrily. It was clear that the animal was agitated and ready to defend its territory. The wolf growled, his protective instincts flaring, while Lyra remained alert, ready to assist. "Stay close," the wolf instructed the kitten, his voice low and commanding. The kitten nodded, its heart racing, but it couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement at the unexpected encounter. The boar charged, its tusks gleaming in the dappled sunlight. The wolf and Lyra sprang into action, maneuvering to flank the boar. They worked in unison, dodging the animal's powerful charges while attempting to drive it away from their territory. The kitten watched, its small body trembling with a mix of fear and admiration for its guardians. Finally, after a tense standoff, the wolf and Lyra managed to outmaneuver the boar, guiding it away from their area. The boar, realizing it was outmatched, retreated back into the forest with a frustrated grunt, disappearing into the underbrush. The wolf turned to the kitten, who was wide-eyed with excitement. "You were brave," the wolf praised, nuzzling the kitten gently. "But remember, it's important to be cautious. Not all creatures will be friendly." Lyra nodded in agreement, her expression serious. "Every encounter teaches us something. Today, you learned the importance of teamwork and the need to respect the boundaries of others." The kitten nodded, still buzzing with adrenaline. "I want to be strong like you two," it exclaimed, determination filling its voice. "You will be," Lyra assured with a smile. "With time and practice, you'll grow into a skilled hunter and protector. Together, we will face whatever challenges come our way." As they continued foraging, the kitten felt a deep sense of belonging. It was no longer just a lost creature in the wilderness. It was part of a family, a unit that worked together to survive and thrive in the wild. The experiences they shared, whether joyful or challenging, only served to strengthen their bond. As the days turned into weeks and the leaves began to fall, the trio prepared for the inevitable change of seasons. They built their strength through hunting and foraging, ensuring they would have enough food stored away for the cold winter months ahead. The wolf taught the kitten how to track prey, while Lyra shared her knowledge of the forest's hidden resources. One afternoon, while the kitten napped in a sunny spot near the cave, the wolf and Lyra sat together, discussing their plans for the coming months. "We need to find a secure place to store our food," the wolf said, his brow furrowed in thought. "The winter can be harsh, and we must be prepared." Lyra nodded in agreement. "I know of a few caves nearby that could serve as good storage. They're well hidden and protected from the elements." She paused, looking at the wolf with concern. "But we must also be cautious of other predators who may seek to invade our territory during the winter months." The wolf sighed, understanding the reality of their situation. "We must remain vigilant. Our family depends on each other, and I will do everything in my power to protect you both." As the sun began to set, casting an orange glow across the sky, the wolf felt a renewed sense of determination. They were not just survivors. They were a family. And together, they would face whatever challenges the wild had in store for them.